I'm not sure.
You're live.
Is there red?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the sign is still out there.
No, thank you.
Okay, we'll call our meeting to order. This is the July 11th regular meeting of the Orono Town Council. Roll call shows all members are present. Agenda review, there are no changes that I am aware of to the agenda. And we go on to approval of minutes of June 13th and June 27th. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
Second.
Any corrections or additions on the minutes of either the 13th or the 27th? Hearing none, all those in favor? And none opposed, 7-0. Moving on to public hearings. Public hearing A, to consider a class 1 malt liquor, wine and spirit liquor license, special amusement permit for music, dancing, entertainment, and a victuals license for Marsh Island Brewing LLC, 2 Main Street, Orono.
Hello, everyone. Patrick Gusti, Code Enforcement Officer, and I'm also representing police, fire, and town clerk with these approvals. And the staff has completed all inspections and paperwork has been completed and recommending approval.
Any comments from the public for or against the issuing of these licenses? I assume that Bella's in Netherlands there.
I am, and there's nobody with their hand raised.
Thank you very much. Any comments from council? Questions? We'll close public hearing A and move on to public hearing B to consider a class 1 malt liquor, wine and spirit liquor license and victuals license for ZRKM LLC, doing business as Taquarita, I believe, 2 Mill Street in Orono. Patrick?
And staff has completed all inspections and paperwork is complete and is recommending approval.
Do we have any public comments for or against the issuing of this license?
Nothing online.
Thank you, Bill. Any comments from council? Close public hearing B. We'll move on to public hearing C to consider an amendment to the Town of Orono Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2, Town Council, to create the position of Town Council Vice Chair and to amend the procedures for addressing the Town Council.
So that's me. I want to just preface what I'm going to say by saying that normally when we open up a chapter, we really dig into that chapter. And there is a lot that we need to dig into Chapter 2 about. Having had a conversation with the council chair, really felt like it was important to move these 2 procedural changes forward quickly. But the plan is still hopefully August and September to start a further dig into this chapter, especially as it relates to procurement. A lot has changed since the 60s and we need to either change the way we've been doing things or change the ordinance, one of the 2. So when we think about this amendment, this is truly a limited revision, and it is aimed at doing 3 things. The first thing is to, just want to make sure that, the first thing is to create the position of vice chair. This person would be designated to fulfill the duties of the chairperson in the chairperson's absence. And the charter deals with pay. We are not dealing with pay here. So this person does not get any, the chair gets a $200 stipend more than everybody else. This person would have to serve for the same $1,000. So the second thing that it does is it addresses public comment periods. The town council had, or council committee had a pretty in-depth conversation about public comment last month, and had talked about public comment at council meetings, at workshops, and then at committee meetings. The council can do what it wants for workshops and committee meetings because it's not covered in the ordinance, and we left it that way here so that council could establish its own procedure and amend it to find something that works. And if later you wanted to come back and add committees and workshop to this, you could, but you don't have to. Public comment periods in regular council meetings is specifically addressed in this section of the ordinance. And so in going through, the only change that we made was to add, or substantial change we made was to add a public comment period at the beginning of each regular meeting. And we said prior to the start of meeting business, usually after the approval of minutes. So it kind of where we would start to get into the meat of the meeting. And as I am recalling the committee meeting, this public comment period is only to discuss items that are not on the agenda. So anything that's not on the agenda can be addressed here. The chairperson can limit the total length of the public comment period, as well as the amount that individuals are permitted to speak. So if there's only one person here, you want to let them speak for 5 minutes, you can do that. If there are 40 people here and you want to let them speak for 60 seconds, then I would suggest 1 minute always sounds more than 60 seconds, but you could do that. It would kind of be left to the chair. I made a procedural issue in section V2, which talks about the chairperson announcing consideration of the item. And then it went on to say at which time people can speak on that item. We don't do that. Council always looks for background before opening it up for the public to speak. So I put that on here. And then when we were having a conversation, it felt like the very directive, no person is permitted to address the council on such item. This is after council has begun its deliberations. What I heard councilors say though is if there's somebody that has something that the council wants to hear, the chair should be able to recognize them and they should be able to come back and speak, which is what that is saying. And then section V3 simply says that people can only address council on an item not appearing on the agenda during the public comment periods offered at the beginning and end. Before it just said after the disposition of all the items. Then the other piece that we have been working on is to clean up the gender specific pronouns, which we try to do every time we dig in to a section of the ordinance. I gave it a yeoman's try. He, his, and him is really hard to find and replace because it picks up any of those three, all those letters put together. So you got an initial revision over the weekend. Cheryl picked up some issues with that. I sent out a second one. Nancy picked up some issues with that. So you have a third one. The only change is pronouns. And I think we've got it, but if we've missed it, as long as with something like that, as long as we know before we send it to codification and we know that your intent is to fix the pronouns, we're okay.
Thank you, Sophie. Any comments from the public for or against the adoption of this amendment?
Nothing online.
Any comments from council? Something we've discussed a couple of times. We're all set. All right, we will close public hearing C. And move on to acknowledgements by council members. Start with Mr. Kenny.
It's probably already been done, but I do want to acknowledge again Rob St. Louis, his retirement, and also the wonderful retirement send off that the staff put on for him. This would be a dedicated Orono employee who will be missed.
I had a fun COVID-safe weekend without leaving the confines of Orono. On Saturday, we held a little impromptu kind of friend birthday party for my daughter down at the playground. They all brought their bikes and rode up to the pump track, and we ate some cake, and it was great. And then Sunday, we went out on the river for some paddle boarding, and my daughter swam at Brownies Beach. And I just want to acknowledge, you know, what a great recreational landscape we have here, and acknowledge all the people who work for the town and make that possible.
I would just piggyback on Leo's comment. I was able to attend the send-off for Rob St. Louis. It really was a fun activity with a lot of good things being said and a nice crowd of folks here. So congratulations to Rob on his new assignment in the university, and to the staff that organized the send-off for him. It was really nice.
I don't have anything major, but I have heard the pool is open, and there's some really exciting kids and some really exciting parents. So everyone's having a good time. So I hope everyone's having a safe summer.
We don't have anything major either, but I've been frequenting our downtown businesses and getting cups of coffee quite a bit lately, and I love our downtown. I would like to shout out to all the business owners.
I had wanted to mention what a fantastic job our library staff has been doing lately. Not only do they greet almost every patron individually and personally when they walk in, they really, I heard from one community member who has had trouble finding consistent housing this summer and subsequently had trouble continuing with her classwork this summer. The library has been the place where she's been able to go to continue her education. That's fantastic. The librarians do a tremendous job, and they also chased down one really weird research request from me recently, so that was awesome. But it's a fantastic staff who operates very professionally. It's a credit to our community.
And I've had a cousin staying with me recently from the big city of New York City. And he was commenting on just how clean everything is. And that he saw one piece of trash while he was walking the other day. And then he walked by not like half an hour later and somebody had already picked it up. And he just thought that was really worth commenting on. So I think it's a testament to, I think, members of the community who picked up after themselves, and also, you know, those who continue to do work to clean up our streets. So I'm grateful to what he involved in.
Well, unfinished business, order 22-65. And this order is going to be postponed until September 12th. We had discussed it in April and wanted to come back and review it. And we got into our budget process. And so that hasn't happened, but it will happen on September 12th. So no action is needed on that item. Sorry for my misreading.
That's okay. You had me
I
double.
swear I can read.
I wasn't going to say a word, Leo.
I honestly read it and thought that
I misread it. Consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Second, please.
Second.
Second by Cheryl. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda? All in favor, none opposed. And moving on to new business. Order 22-141, order approving an amendment to the Orono, Town of Orono ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2, Town Council, to create the position of Town Council Vice Chair and to amend the procedures for addressing the Town Council. This is the item that we had a public hearing on just a few minutes ago. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
So, second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion from the council on this item? We're all set. Anything from the public out there, Bell?
No, there is not.
Thank you. Ready for vote? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Order 22-142, authorizing the purchase of one 2022 Ford Utility Police Interceptor from Darling Bangor Ford of Bangor. the police department in the amount of $41,078 plus $3,179 for equipment purchase and setup for a total cost not to exceed $44,257 to be drawn from the FY23 capital equipment budget. There. Motion to approve. And a second. Second.
So we discussed this at length during the budget workshops. This is a year that we're looking to fill or turn over one of the cruisers in the fleet. This allows us to change. This is a gas vehicle, but it is the only one. We couldn't even get a quote on electric or a hybrid. And our name has been put on a list informally right now. It would become formal when you approve it, with hopes of actually getting this in before, next June, which is what we did this past year. So.
Any questions from council? Anything you'd like to add, Chief? No? Okay. Good. Any comments from the public on this item now?
Sorry, no, there's nothing.
All right, we ready for a vote? All those in favor? And opposed? And one abstention.
One abstention.
So 6 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention. Chief, order allocating a budget of $233,850 from the town's allocation of the American Rescue Plan state and local fiscal recovery funds for the following one-time capital projects as considered in the FY23 municipal budget. And those projects are $80,000 for municipal pool filtration system and deck repair, $110,000 for public safety facility assessment and related repairs, and $43,850 for public safety administration vehicle. Motion to approve. From Cheryl.
Second.
Second from me.
So when we went through the FY23 budget process, council identified these 3 projects or purchases as right for ARPA funding. This is in order to allocate the budget appropriately and show it on our financials the way it should be shown, and authorize staff to go out and begin to work the projects up. We need to actually appropriate the budget. So you've got this budget for ARPA funding right now. In a few orders, you have the budget for infrastructure reserve. So these we do after the budget passes because they are separate funds.
Thank you. Any comments from council members on this order? Or questions?
Can you remind me from our conversation during the budget process, some of the details about the public safety administration vehicle, in terms of whether that was going to be a hybrid or electric vehicle, or any of the intentions around it?
Yeah, so at this point, this is replacing a vehicle that is truly on its last legs. It's coming out of the same state bid as the police vehicle, because that has all of the harnesses necessary to put radios and lights, which we are required to put in a response vehicle, which the public safety director's vehicle is a response vehicle. And so this is a gas purchase, which I think we all agreed was not ideal, but we're also running into vehicles that are kind of running off from under us.
And there are no options at this point in time.
Yeah, no, we're not seeing any options because we needed that vehicle to be able to be on a scene for a period of time with radios and lights and the ability to plug in our computer equipment, which over a period of time that gets really difficult on a scene.
And I'd like to add to that, I'm gonna report out on the climate change conference that I went to, but I did have a chance to talk to other municipalities who are running into the same problems. So this is not just our issue, it's statewide.
Staff would love to have hybrids and electric
Yeah.
vehicles.
It's unfortunate because there's a lot of funding out there, but the vehicles have to be there.
And I think it got brought up during the council discussion that 18 months from now, there were vehicles out there. We could look at trade-ins, we could look at any number of things to try to get the council where the council wants to go with that.
And I've heard that 12 to 18 months is the wait list for a lot of municipalities right now. So it's not just us.
Any other comments or questions?
Could you explain that one more time about why we do this outside of the budget process? I'm still scratching my head on that.
So these budgets are not part of the commitment. So over the next 3 meetings, we build the total budget for the coming year. So at the special meeting at the end of June, we did all of the tax dollar related budgets. So the TIF budget, the general capital, the general fund operating budget, all got approved on the 27th. This budget, we look at the funds that we currently have and how are we going to use those funds. So for example, Rob can tell you best with the infrastructure reserve budget, what that budget needs to be in FY23 after he ends FY22. And
This is even simpler, this
Yes.
particular item,
And, oh, go ahead.
because these are items that we took out of the regular budget and funded through the federal funds. But this authorizes our staff to proceed with those items using those federal funds.
The ARPA funds, I mentioned because she did also mention that it'll be the same for the capital reserve, so I assume the same process applies. So that's what this still feels strange to me.
Yeah.
Understand?
Can I ask just one more question?
Yep.
Sophie, when we do, after we have allocated this, how much do we have left in the ARPA funds, or what are we looking at for a balance?
So I wrote all of that down, I promptly left it on my desk, but we've got,
Ballpark is fine, I'm just curious what we.
so ballpark, we've got
Yeah.
about 600,000
Okay.
left, and I am going to come to you with a project that we are in need of some of
Okay.
those funds.
And it's 2024?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? Are we ready to vote on this order? All those in favor of order 22-143? All in favor, none opposed. Order 22-144, order authorizing the purchase of a 2022 Ford Utility Police Interceptor from Dowlings Ford at a price of $40,668 for public safety administrative vehicle, plus up to $3,179 for equipment purchase and setup, for a total cost not to exceed $43,847 to be funded with the American Rescue Plan Act, state and local fiscal recovery funds. Motion to approve.
So this is another public safety administration vehicle?
No, so
So move.
Oh, yeah. We'll
Moved and
discuss.
seconded.
Second.
Thank you.
So this can be confusing,
Yes,
especially
I
to
am
people who
confused, I
have only been
confess.
through this one.
Right.
So in town operations,
Mhm.
different from the private sector, we have to first have a budget, which is what you just
Mhm.
adopted.
Mhm.
And then if it's over $5,000, council has to approve its expense.
Okay, so this is the same public
This is
safety administration
exactly the
vehicle
same one
we
that we
just talked about.
about.
Yep.
That clarifies, great.
And it is confusing.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Why is this vehicle $750 more than the other vehicle?
It's not, it's less. It should be less. the last one was 41,000 plus 3,000. This is 40,000 plus 3,000.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that all right? Did I get it?
You got it. I was backwards.
Okay.
Thank you.
What happens to the extra $3?
Well, it sits, and when we don't use it, it lapses back into the grant fund for you guys to reallocate again. There, you
Yeah.
see, you can spend money twice. There you go.
We all set? Ready for vote? All those in favor of order 22-144? Raise your hand. All in favor, none opposed, 7-0. Excuse me. Order 22-145, order authorizing the town manager to purchase a 2022 Doosan, is that how you say it?
Tucson.
Doosan DL280.7 front-end loader from Central Main Equipment of Stillwater, Maine, in an amount not to exceed $147,401, including trade-in of the town's 2003 Komatsu WA 250 front-end loader. Motion to approve, please. And second,
Second.
there.
Yeah, so on July 7th, we received bids for front-end loaders. We received 5 bids. The low bid was from Central Equipment of Stillwater for $147,401, which includes a $32,000 trade allowance for the 2003 Komatsu that we'll be replacing. We have another Doosan in the fleet. That's the other front-end loader that we have. So we're pretty confident this will be a quality machine, so we're recommending approval.
I find the range of the
Yeah.
prices astounding.
Well, also, it's like, and this one is the least expensive and in stock.
Well, that was one of the reasons why we wanted that information at bid time, because, after experiencing the issue with the Ford vehicles, we didn't want to, if we could get something quicker, it might have made sense to spend a little bit more, just to know that we would be able to get it, so. But in this case, it happened to be the case that
Yeah, great.
the low bid is in stock and we should be able to get it in about a month. There's some minor changes with the machine that they need to do at the dealer. And we should be able to see it in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
So, good questions.
Please.
Of all people to ask this question, is there not any consideration to keeping having a third? Is there any value on something like that? Because you've come in they've come in,
Yeah.
we're already lower with
I
the
have
thing, and
been really surprised at how low they were.
that I asked that question.
No, well, I asked that question. But, yeah, so there is. Right now, that machine is pretty much at the landfill throughout the entire summer. When you run a piece of equipment like this with rubber tires in that environment, we have special slime inside the tires that help you, but it's just hard on the machine, dusty, that kind of stuff. So when we trade that machine in, or whenever we get a new machine, we always put the oldest part of the fleet out there because it is kind of the hardest thing we do on equipment. So the logic of keeping that machine out there and just letting it live out its days, how long that is, does in some ways make sense. And we keep the 2 newer models in the fleet, in town, and plow them, of course, and all that. But so there's value in keeping that, but that's not my decision to make. So we would absolutely make use of it until some catastrophic mechanical failure, at which point we would send it on its way.
And then, so in the winter, like what you do now with the 2, one is, they're both in, and then you bring one out there when you need it at the dump.
Right, no, right, we'll bring it out probably a couple times a month, take it out to the landfill to manage that. The volumes are far smaller, far less.
So if you were to do something like this, would you still bring that in just to keep it covered or?
Oh, yeah, we bring it in and find a place for it. Might put a tarp over or something. I don't know.
Shocker that I'm asking the question, but I think they probably go for 50,000. I mean, they're giving the best trade in on it, obviously, so that's good, but
They were,
I mean,
they tied, but yeah, they were the best.
to me, I guess, now that we're in, it's my better judgment, or worse judgment. That seems like something to hear more about to me.
Yeah.
It's 30, it's a delta of 30,000. That's a significant, it's a 250,000 new piece of equipment, $200,000 piece of equipment new. If that means our new ones get treated that much better and last that much longer, and that thing just lives out its life, and maybe it's 10 years that we don't put any of the new ones out of the dump or something.
It's not a good time.
15, maybe it's 15 years.
Maybe because we wouldn't use it in the winter, so the hours on both machines would be decreased, so it, longevity wise, it would.
So I'd like to hear from our town manager on this item.
So I value the opinion of our public works director. And I know that if we weren't gonna use it, he would have said that no. I mean, Rob is a straight shooter that way. He asked initially, part of my facial expression was that he asked that question initially, and I said, there is no way council's gonna go for that. So, and I don't want
Like to
him,
keep guessing.
I would not want the operations, the team, and the new equipment to be penalized simply because I have not yet dialed in what council will go for or not. I do think his plan would be a solid one. I do think when this piece of equipment hits its end of life, it is going to be catastrophic. It is not like it's just an older piece of equipment. It's got some needs. I also know that we have one of the most talented crew of mechanics and bodywork people out there that have nursed trucks till well beyond their end of life. So from my perspective, if council is on board, I think it makes sense. I just really didn't even think it was a starter for you guys after going through the budget process. So
Plus an end of life for that front end loader would be in our landfill. I mean, you have to dispose of it. So if you're trading,
Oh.
we would
Just-
just,
No,
we would put that out to bid.
Just
I mean, it would be
Just drive it
Oh, negative.
It couldn't
Just a
drive.
metal
You'd have to
alone,
tow it. You'd have to
metal
tow
alone,
it.
something.
Okay, other comments for council on this?
I would like to say that, even if we were not doing the trade-in, that's still saving almost $75,000 from where we thought we were gonna be. And we could also look at the, almost $30,000 as an investment in the new equipment itself to avoid the strain on it. I think it makes sense.
Point of clarification. It'd be the 176 plus 30.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 206, 401.
Right.
But it'd still be
Yes.
40.
Oh, so we're saving more money than we thought we would, yeah. So, I mean, the fact that we're saving money and we're saving wear and tear on a new piece of equipment and a currently used piece of equipment makes a lot of sense.
Other comments?
How, if we are running the older piece of equipment as compared to the second line of equipment, are we just investing in inefficiency? Are we just making an inefficient vehicle run longer, or are we making an efficient vehicle run that can preserve the wear and tear?
Yeah.
Ideally.
So we're not like at the landfill, you're not in a production environment, like you're not trying to make so many yards of gravel a day and those kinds of things. So the way that we use that piece of equipment is sort of on and off, but it's out there all the time and we're able to keep up. So as long as they continue to operate the way it is now, it would be perfectly fine.
What, how hard is it on the vehicle to have one of our relatively newer vehicles out there at the landfill.
Puts dust in the, air breathing stuff, so that creates undue wear of the engine and that kind of stuff. The other part of it is you're driving on trash, so the tires are just loaded with nails and stuff like that, which isn't ideal. So when we bring that out of the landfill, we always have to spend some time picking the metal out of the tires before we actually use it out in the field. So not having to do that would actually kind of be a big benefit.
Yeah. Do you have a guess about how much labor it would save you and or what kind of extended life you might have on other vehicles if we do let this sort of what might be an extra old piece of equipment live at the dump?
So I think when we look at that, it would be the hours on the equipment itself. So we're still gonna, as far as personnel hours and those types, I think that's a wash. It's just which piece of equipment. So you could think of taking those two pieces of equipment, splitting the hours you're gonna put on those each year in half. So the winter hours will be on the new machine.
Yeah.
The summer and the landfill hours will continue to be on the older machine. And that's got about 12,000, a little more than 12,000 hours on it. So if you put 300 or 400 a year on that over the next, that's 300 or 400 on the new machine that you're not gonna put out there. So,
And less nails.
yeah, I don't know, I guess if you look at it, instead of 15 years, maybe you're gonna get 18, 20, depends on.
So if we were going to modify the motion that's in front of us, we would need to have an amendment. And the amendment would need to say that we are going to accept the low bid, but not trade the
So,
whole machine.
so I would simply say authorizing the town manager to purchase a 2002 Doosan DL 287 front end loader from Central Maine Equipment of Stillwater, Maine in an amount not to exceed $176,000. 70, I thought it was 76. Oh, my typo, 79. $179,401.
So my question is that not trading has no effect on the bid.
No, yeah, the bid is set up such that they provide us a price with or without the trade.
Okay,
So the bids are, they don't offer us a base price with a trade allocation and then one number. They give us two numbers.
Okay.
One, and it's understood that you may or may not accept the trade allocation.
gotcha. Thank you. So Sophie, were you proposing, if we wanted to do that, a different order or an amended order?
I would just amend it to put where it says the 147,401, I would change that to 179,401. There was a typo in my background.
And then
And I
cancel.
would I would take out including the trade-in, just leaving that.
But we're
that's a-
talking about the 176, not the 147.
Yeah, so you're gonna, if you look at order 22-145, just up from that we go. If you trade out the 179,401 for the 147,401 and remove that whole phrase after.
Does anybody want to make that as an amendment? We'll see where it goes.
I move we make that as an
Okay.
And I will shockingly second that.
Honestly, this is amazing.
Who said local government was boring?
So does everybody understand the amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
So
So
now we have
we're
three
gonna-
signing
we're gonna, well, we're gonna vote on the amendment.
After
And
we
then we're
vote on
gonna
it,
go
we'll
back
find out.
and vote on the amended motion.
Exactly. You have read Roberts.
Yes. So,
It's almost like he's done this.
Did we have yes, we did have a second on the amendment.
Do we have discussion on the amendment?
Yes, we can certainly have discussion. on the
How
amendment.
would that affect our payments?
So, before I had them quote me 250, then I had them quote me 177. I'm gonna go back and say, hey, how about we do something in the middle? And they will quote me the same. They have remained solid on the quoted interest rate. And in keeping with the budget, we agreed that the first payment would happen in this fiscal year. I established that to be October, it was either the 1st or the 15th, to make sure that we had received some of our tax payments in. So it's going to be, that payment's going to be somewhere between $38,000 and $56,000. Please don't ask me to do that math in my head. I cannot.
This is why it's good to work with a bank that works with a lot of municipalities, because they know that we take a long time to do things and might change everything in the middle.
And the key is, either way, keeping the older machine or trading it in, the payment is going to be less than we budgeted.
Yes.
Okay. We're ready to vote on the amendment. Are there, first, is there any further discussion on the amendment or questions about it? All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Wow. 7 in favor, none opposed. Now we'll go back to vote on the amended motion.
Yes.
All those in favor of the amended motion.
Wait,
So that is.
I think you're saying the same thing. but I'm not sure.
No, so when you post an order for the public to see, the first step, if you want to change that, is to amend it.
Oh,
And so you have amended the order, so now Nancy's minutes will reflect the amended order. Now you have the opportunity to vote on the order. And the reason they do that is
As amended.
as amended. The reason they do that is perhaps only 3 of you wanted to amend it. It's going to be a lot cleaner because you're only voting on the motion. Hopefully.
So we have had it was moved and seconded, the main motion. The amendment is passed. We are now voting on the motion as amended.
Which we just voted.
We voted on the amendment, and now we're going back and voting on the motion, the main motion, as we have amended it. So what we're voting on is accepting the low bid from Central Maine Equipment for $179,401 and not trading the older machine,
Yes.
I would like to make one other comment before voting in favor of this, which is that I do have some worries about infrastructure creep in that once we have 3, then it becomes harder to go back to 2. And in my ideal world of how we run things, you know, at the point in time when the one at the dump dies, we just shrug and say, okay, well, back to having 2. And I feel a need to voice that before a good conscience voting for this. But I do think that this is the best use of an old piece of equipment in the here and now.
Well, so I completely agree.
So one of the things that happens on our end, and we did this with the holder, when we made a decision and we were gonna get a new one, and when the old one died, we were gonna let it go out of the fleet. So when the old one died and we brought it back, we said, and remember, the council that did this said this, and the council that was here at the time said, we understand that, this is what we think is best for the community, which was to buy another one. So from a standpoint, staff really tries to remember and note, and hopefully we'll be able to do that next time. And we might come back and say it's time to move the other one in if that's what operationally is best. And if it's not, it would at least come with the notation of that very concern.
Well, thank you for passing that on to future generations.
All right, you ready for the main motion as amended? You all know what we're voting for. All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed.
Wild ride, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leah.
Okay, We are moving on now to order 22-146. And order authorizing the borrowing of funds from the First National Bank to purchase a front-end loader and related attachments and accessories with a tax-exempt loan. We need to change the amount.
$209,401.
Can we do that without an amendment? Okay,
So shall I move approval on this?
so I'll finish reading it, I guess, first. So the original motion was with a tax exempt loan in the amount of $177,500 with a prepayment term of up to 5, with a repayment term of up to 5 years, with the first payment of $38,562.68 due October 1st, 2022, at an interest rate of 3.81%, and further to authorize the council chair and town manager / treasurer to execute any and all documents necessary to execute said borrowing. So let's have a motion to approve that, and then we'll go back and make an amendment.
Second.
Okay,
When you look to amend the amount, I would also ask you to strike of 38,000. I still want you to keep with the first payment due by October 1st, 2022. That just clarifies for the auditor that we're making the first payment now.
and the new amount would be,
$209,407. That's the 179,401. What did I just say? Oh, 401. 401. That's the 179,401, which was the base bid, plus the 30,000 that Rob needs for attachments and accessories, equipment. That will come back to you. We needed to know what the piece of equipment was that we were buying before we could go buy equipment and accessories for it, mainly the plow.
Yeah, the plow is the lion's share of it.
okay. Questions or comments on the main motion?
So does the same first payment remain the same? I mean, I know the due date does, the payment itself.
No, we want to strike that.
Okay.
So we need a amendment.
A motion to amend.
A motion to amend. So if somebody would like to make that motion to amend and strike $177,500 and replace it with $209,401, and then strike the first payment amount and just say with the first payment due October 1st, 2022.
I would like to move approval on that. I would like to amend it that way.
Thank you.
That's what I was going to say.
I'll second her.
There.
Move.
Are there any questions on the amendment? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? That passes 7-0. And now we're back to the main motion as amended. We already have had a motion to approve and a second, so we don't need to do that again. Any questions on the main motion as amended? We all know what we're voting for. All those in favor? And again, it is 7-0 with unopposed. Okay. Just to keep Mr. Yerkser in the chair there, we'll move on to order 22-147, order allocating a budget of $347,500 for the following projects funded through the Capital Infrastructure Reserve Fund. And those projects are $12,500 for Riverdale Drive drainage and overlay, $80,000 for Westwood Drive drainage and overlay, $130,000 for Beach Street drainage and road reconstruction, which it badly needs, $15,000 for College Avenue sidewalk reconstruction, $55,000 for Park Street temporary shim, and $55,000 for MDOT planning partnership grant match. Motion to approve, please.
Approval?
And a second.
Sure. So a couple of years ago, we addressed a concern raised by a resident who saw our very large amounts of carry forward money. So money that was not spent in FY '22 or the previous year that was carried forward into the next year. And when we looked at that, we could see that sometimes it was $750,000. And what it appeared to the community as if we were overtaxing people in one year and then just spending in the next year. What happens is, unfortunately, the calendar, the construction season and the fiscal year do not line up. And so Rob needs approval well in advance to be able to bid and scope jobs. Sometimes that those expenses happen after the beginning of the next fiscal year. So a few years ago, we council created the Capital Infrastructure Reserve Fund. All reserve funds, the only way that money can come out of those are for council to approve the project specifically that's coming out. But what happens is everything that is unspent at the end of one year sweeps into the Capital Infrastructure Reserve Fund. And then Rob develops a budget for the coming construction season. There's usually a little bit, not a lot, in there that is not encumbered, which also allows him to deal with most of the time it's municipal partnership initiative grants from DOT. It allows us to use that for matching dollars or things of that nature. So Rob looked at, I don't have an exact amount of what is getting swept because we're still paying FY '22 bills, and we'll see those continue coming through July. What I know is we have a balance in that account of $662 from last year. $662,000.
Okay.
Sorry, $662,000. The bulk of that is the match that we have been saving for the sidewalk and pedestrian improvement project. So it's more of a.
That was all, the only amount that we didn't spend last year was allocated out of the infrastructure reserve, or the funds that we held on to from the Main Street sidewalks project, which we're now
Going to talk to you about next
fully
week.
on.
So we have cash to be able to do this. Cash will also go into the account. Want to talk a little bit about what those projects are?
The projects that we're gonna.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the first four are pretty straightforward. Riverdale is the drainage project. We're doing a little bit of under drain on one side with some with a new catch basin, then a shim and overlay pavement. Westwood is again it's pavement surface project, shim and overlay with some ditching and driveway culverts and things like that on the sides that will need to be done. B Street's a little bit more involved. This was a project that was funded in the last fiscal year, but because of the complications with some of the design and the drainage, we decided to hold off on this one while we did all the other work in Teflon. So this project will be some new drainage structures, storm sewer. Then we're going to just start over with the road surface and do a reclaim with 2 new layers of pavement on that. There'll be curb and some new catch basins and things like that on that project. College Ave, I'm happy to say this is the final phase. You actually probably see us already working out there with curb replacements and a new sidewalk surface for that. There'll be some areas this week that we'll be working on cutting out and getting the pavement started, and then curb is scheduled for the middle of next week. So by the end of this month, that project will be complete, and that will be a 4-year, 5-year phased process of reconstructing all of the sidewalk on both sides of College Avenue from Park all the way to the Old Town line. So glad to put that one in our review, and it's really been a big improvement for that corridor. So this 15,000 will complete that project. The Park Street temporary shim, so Park Street, from roughly where Boulder Drive is, second entrance for Tomar Woods, to the town line is probably the roughest piece of state road that we have. The DOT through BAX has funded a mill and fill, so they'll build the surface over, shim and overlay. But that's not gonna happen until 2024. So DOT projects, we usually are working to get those funded 3 or sometimes 4 years before the allocations actually are available. I'm not confident that we can maintain that road surface for the next 2 construction seasons, for the next 2 years, without doing some kind of basic cover it up, fill the cracks and potholes kind of project, because and the way that's, so it's thermal cracking, so it's, you've got all these cracks that go across the road, and so when you drive that, even when you drive it just in your car, you hear that kaboom. Well, people that live in that area are hearing that all day, constantly, day and night, and so it's really kind of become a bit of quality of life issue too for people. You can patch the potholes and things like that, but it just doesn't really take care of it. So what I would do is just put a really thin pavement layer over it that will last a couple of years and get us to the bigger project, which is roughly about it's about $500,000 project. So that's the Park Street shim. And then the questions on any of those? So the DOT project,
We're gonna be talking about this next week.
we're going to be talking about that next week. This is a planning initiative project that is a big step for us. So this project is a scope that goes from on Route 2 from Kelly Road all the way to the Old Town line to address essentially all the issues that we have in that corridor. DOT is changing their perspective on cohesiveness of corridors and those types of things, and really is starting to look at funding much larger projects instead of chopping things up and getting, you know, a certain part of it done now, a certain part of it done then later. Wants to work with communities to create a cohesive downtown feel. This would be the first step in a process that could lead to us receiving significant grant funds to reconstruct. So that's that.
Yeah, I mean, it is more than a 5-minute discussion. Ultimately, you're setting a budget right now. We're gonna come back to you with the particulars of the grant application that we have to submit to MDOT. My understanding is this is one of those kind of foregone conclusion grant applications if we submit it.
Yeah, we've been working with DOT planning to establish the scope of work and description of what we'll be asking consultant to do for us for a couple months now. And so we'll be bringing that to you all next week. And we'll be talking much more about that then. But yeah, this is an ongoing process. If you stay within the process, the funding allocations are usually understood rather than zero.
Wait till next week.
So just think about all the work that we have been doing and the studies. It ties everything together for pedestrian safety, walkability, more of a village feel. So it's a huge project and we want to be able to talk with you, but we also didn't want to hold up the rest of Rob's budget for next week. Yeah.
Okay, questions on this order? You all set?
Is this one on again?
22,147.
I guess it's part of this or not, but what, you said you didn't have the exact funds, but approximately what is being swept over?
We were in, the last time I looked at that budget, we were in the $350,000.
Right around what we're talking about spending?
Yeah.
And do you know approximately how much is encumbered or not? Or how much?
So what's
How
in
much is
the,
not encumbered of that?
in the current allocation, $62,000 is not encumbered. You might change that encumbrance after we talk, or you might elect to want to keep it, but that is the 600,000 for the sidewalks.
Right. So the Main Street sidewalk project that we had developed with Sebago Technics over the last couple of years came in way over budget. It was a 1.2 or $1.8 million project, depending on what we wanted to do with a couple of elements there. But what we chose to do is to take the 600,000 that we had allocated to that, address the highest priorities, which were essentially the crosswalk locations throughout the. So we were basically going to have to phase through the overall project, and so we put those funds in reserves to fund the first phase of that.
Other questions on the sewer? Ready for vote? All those in favor? 7 in favor, none opposed. Okay, thank you, Rob. Thank you. Move on to council committee representative reports. I'd be happy to start. In finance committee, we had our last meeting and had 2 items. One item was just a final review of the 2023 budget. And the other item was a very interesting presentation by Professor Robert Glover on incentives for counselors to encourage broader participation in elected office. And we reviewed the literature that he had found on this item, and it was very interesting. Didn't seem that the increasing the salary of counselors would necessarily bring a more diverse council. We decided to review the information and discuss it again in a workshop in the future. Cheryl, you had some
Yes,
information.
I do. So I have kind of 2 things to report out. So because we as council members have a stipend to attend other things for knowledge, I went to the Communities Leading on Climate Change conference in June 17th, which was great. It was municipalities from all around the state, different kinds of people from different places. And I attended Understanding Social Vulnerability and Engaging the Community. I attended 2 morning conferences, and then the afternoon was breakout sessions. The afternoon was Efficiency Maine programming and community advocacy into local climate action. Both of them, the keynote was Gina McCarthy. So Governor Mills was there. Shelley Pingree was there. So there were a lot of kind of high-powered politicians who are invested in the state and also invested in climate change. I just wanted to just say that it was definitely money well spent. It was information that is helping with our regional climate action that Orono is involved with. So I wanted to say thank you to the town for helping to sponsor that. And there's a really nice website, a really nice PowerPoint that Efficiency Maine put out on increasing funding for municipalities in their climate action efforts. which isn't available until August anyway, but it's good to know that there's funding out there. The Environment Committee, on another note, met on June 23rd. We are discussing now the new Orono Energy Efficiency Fair that will be part of the Community Resiliency Grant that we wrote and Megan wrote, and we are in the process of forming a subcommittee to coordinate efforts to help staff put this together. The efficiency fair will be October 22nd, which is a Saturday at Wells Common. And so I'm hoping that we have some turnout tomorrow and some. It's October 22nd. Is the date that we secured, and it's going to be an all-day event. We're working on vendors. Staff, Belle is doing an amazing job, and Megan's doing an amazing job getting this, throwing this together. I shouldn't say throwing it together. It's not a throwing.
It's a heavy lifting.
It's a heavy lift.
Just
Yeah.
casually.
Right,
tossing
it's
it
not a
together.
tossing, it's a lot of work, and so, so happy to help out and put those, and to put that together, and also to help Orono folks with heating costs this winter. So we are kind of, we're headed in a direction. We're moving forward. I'm excited about. And that's it.
Thank you.
That's it.
Jeff,
I believe our last community development meeting was when we had our in-depth discussion of the DEI process, and we gave some recommendations on language to staff, and we're going to consider that again.
I haven't had anything on my committee since our last meeting.
Busy. Okay, moving on to future agenda items of concern. Does anybody have anything they would like to bring up on this?
I would have one thing. Several months ago, we had sort of an off-the-cuff discussion about the connecting driveway between Mill Street and the parking lot. And we talked about how that was probably best going to be folded into a bigger discussion on planning and walkability. And we're going to address it at some point after the budget season. So I just wanted to make sure that that is still.
It is on our agenda. One of the issues we ran into is we had put a capstone out. They kind of went left, and it was a good project, but it was not really the one that we had asked for. So we're gonna have to put that back in. It won't take us very long to come back out, but that's something that we had hoped to get in front of council before snow flies. It will take some legal work, but we can at least get a sense of where council is with that question.
Other items? Maybe this is the spot. I was curious if there was any feedback or any update on signs for the bridge and lighting for the bridge.
So lighting for the bridge, we are at the mercy of trying to find a vendor.
Well, I got some plans. For junction box.
So we're,
Perfect place for that.
So I got some plans for the DOT. I think we might figure out any use.
good. And we're still trying to figure out, we pulled part of the record, Leo, we just have to go back and pull the rest around the conversation, because signs around diving on the bridge came up, and our recollection is that when posed that question to our risk management team, which is not internal, it's an external, it's our combination of MMA legal and MMA risk management. The concern with posting a prohibition is that we are then required to be able to demonstrate enforcement of that prohibition, which is why if you look, our signs on the various parks that are adjacent to the river don't say no swimming, they say swim at your own risk. So we're just trying to go back and find exactly where that was spoken about, and I'm not able to find email communication. So I want to not just say it would be much easier to just put a sign up if ultimately it's going to hinder our community and other that we have. So I just want to,
That's, I wouldn't want to hinder immunity, obviously, but I mean, it seems it's a little scary because of what has happened there recently. Put it, they passed an ordinance, right? It's an ordinance that was passed. To not put that up. Yeah, I get legality, but I look at it as people might not know that it's shallow.
in
So,
a really poor place to jump.
yeah, so,
So we have started that process. Nancy did the first dive. We're gonna try again and reach out if we have to. There's been turnover at MMA, so I kind of loathe to reach out if I have the answer at my fingertips. So, but we'll get an answer to you there.
thanks. And future agenda, item, could we bring forward what the state has done with senior freezing of taxes, circuit programs thing?
So we can, you're talking about LD 290? Yeah, the issue that we have, we're trying to figure it out ourselves. As soon as I can figure that out, MMA and parts of Maine Revenue Sharing, Revenue Service are coming together in a working group to try to figure out how this is actually gonna work. We are going to have to advertise because it doesn't do anything for this tax year, nothing. But they have to sign up for it by December 1st. So we're trying
Okay.
very hard to
Yep.
get the word out. Ideally, we would have something to say in the tax bill that goes out this year. But it doesn't take any action by the council at all. It just is. We're just trying to figure out how that's going to get managed and what it actually means. And the assessing world truly does not know at all.
Okay.
We've
yeah.
gone to the group of assessors that are supposed to be the gurus and they don't know.
It would be nice if MMA at least had kind of a bullet thing, but the timelines are the most important thing.
Yeah.
right? I want to get out of those.
And, you know, there is another state program that they have to sign up for in December. So there are two that we can advertise. But I need to know what I'm advertising.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Any other?
I
Yes.
had a couple things I wanted to raise. One, there's a letter, an email to all of us very recently from the trustees of the Orono Water District, asking that we pick up the issue or continue taking up the issue. It seems like there's some history with this question of fluoride in the water. And they feel, it seems to me from this letter, that it would be good for us to pursue removing fluoride from the water. So I think whatever the next steps are on that, for us to discuss that would be good. So that's the first thing.
And that would be a workshop item or a committee item,
Well,
but one we should discuss,
Yeah.
no question.
And the second thing they had was the Comstock County Jail proposed expansion. I brought up the input that we had from the resident, who also happens to be a criminologist who studies these things. Just wondering sort of when we might end up having a discussion.
so as we discussed, my first thought was we should reach out to find out what the actual proposal was, because the proposal that was described in the email that you had received that somebody forwarded and Cheryl forwarded on to me was nothing like the proposals that I had seen. So we wanted to look at that. So I reached out to the county manager and the sheriff and asked for a Zoom meeting with me, my chief, to understand what exactly the proposal is and to get whatever information they have, find out what legitimate next steps would make sense. Like, does it make sense for them to come and talk to you? Or is this a different discussion? What I got back was, we will take that under advisement. And I have not heard back, and I've left 2 emails, and I sent chief to make contact with the sheriff to say, hey, really like to do this before you end up in front of town council. So there, the sheriff's initial suggestion was that the Orono Town Council come speak before the county commissioners. I personally, and I only represent you, so if I'm off base, you tell me. I don't like that. The Orono Town Council doesn't look up to speak to the 3 county commissioners. You have a question, you're asking your elected sheriff and who administers the jail and the county manager to come to a meeting and explain why, what they're doing. I think that that is the trail we should stay on. I think if they're not gonna get back to us, I think we give them another few days because it's been the holiday and school ending and all of that. If they're not back to us, then I think we schedule a time that we wanna talk about it and do the best we can without them here and without factual information if they're not going to give it to us. How's that for,
That's great.
I'm trying to work
And
the
invite them
process.
to the meeting, certainly.
Yeah, but
yes.
I
That sounds
think-
great, Sophie.
I think I want to try to preserve the relationships as we can, because we have those for a variety of things
Of course.
beyond jail. But if we're getting kind of shoved to the side, I think that I don't like the visual of the council traipsing in to speak to.
Yeah,
who
Just ask
sit-
them questions.
Yeah, they don't, their dais is like, I have to look up to look at it, so.
Well.
No, seriously. Even if I was standing on it, I wouldn't have to look at it.
I suddenly have an item of concern for me personally that multiple times today, people have referred to emails that I did not get, whether it's, I didn't get this about fluoride, I didn't get anything about this week's meeting. That's why I emailed you. and said,
Chloride, I see.
I thought I,
I'm
did I?
not receiving emails. I'm receiving some emails. I got the one from the middle school student asking about flags on Main Street, but like, I didn't get any communication. That's why I emailed you about where the background materials were, because I was like, I didn't get an email from
So I
somebody.
think I goofed that.
Yeah, I
I
didn't get
was,
those.
Oh,
yeah, I did not, I put it all there. That was my goof. I was trying to shuffle too many balls in
It
the
looks
air on
like there
Friday.
may have been a typo in for Rod's email. It's the mgarter@orono.org
So-
is
That
what
would
it
do
says,
it.
which would do it.
I-
So,
Forwarded that on to Tom, and Tom just didn't have a chance to get back to me on what would you like me to do with this?
Chloride.
And so I'm gonna just turn around and forward it to the whole council, so everybody.
starting to get nervous.
No, we're not. So that's the answer to the jail is I did the things I said I was gonna do, and I just haven't had people respond back.
Thank you. for your
You're
work on
welcome.
that. And then, yeah, the third thing I was gonna bring up was that email from the 8th grader, Nina, who proposed that we keep all year round pride flags instead of just in the month of June. And I thought that was a wonderful suggestion that probably wouldn't actually take very many resources. So I don't know what the next steps are and something like that.
Refresh our memory about the situation with the current flags and how they get there and how long they
So the town does not have any of the equipment necessary to put flags up. In order to put those flags up, they have to be quite high. It requires a bucket truck.
Okay.
So for years and years and years, the ones on the bridge were actually managed through the American Legion and Dana Smith, who was a business person that had the equipment to get up there and do what they need to do. He may have used a ladder, but I don't think he had the same OSHA considerations that we do. When Dana retired and sold his business, the university and town kind of put our heads together, and the university agreed with this within reason that this is not our primary job or responsibility. We'll try to keep flags up. And the town does not own the bridge. We do not own the things on the bridge.
Yeah.
We cannot give permission to put things on the bridge.
Gotcha.
However, DOT hasn't said anything yet. And so what we have agreed to do for the university is the university gets requests internally to put flags up. And so sometimes like there was a international month, they were awesome flags that they put up at one point. They put, like the American flags just show up. We don't have anything to do with that. And then we have agreed so that community members aren't reaching out to the university, that all of the community requests, the town kind of facilitates, and that most of that happens through Mitch's shop. So the bridge, kind of the give and the take of that is the university also, we're not telling them they can't put flags up, and we kind of work together to get those up. The ones on the Main Street, so that's a Main Street historic corridor. When we asked the university to put, initially it was only on the lighted poles because you're only supposed to put American flags where they can be lit. When we asked that, we said, hey, it's a historic district. We'd like to put these up. We want them to go up for Flag Day and not come back down until right after Veterans Day, because they can't stay up year round. And that was, sure, we'll do those, but that's it. And then Humane Athletics was working with Mitch and wanted to do more of a branding, which is how the every other flag came about. But again, that's Humane putting up for Humane branding. So I think
The flag, the American flags, that was part, they were funded through some sort of project, or I'm trying to remember
so those
there was a
American
group that brought them
a
to.
group with a current note, there was one community member representing a group of people who came to my office and said, this is what we would very much like. Look at all the other communities that have those gateway American flag kind of corridors. So that's the logistics of how things get done. I would want to just be a little bit concerned about over tapping the town gown relationship that gets that all done. But we make, that's not like I would argue, or what we have been told is we have an agreement with the Verizon, Spectrum, whoever owns the pole. I have to go back and look. We have an agreement to put those flags there for the period of time that we have set.
So I guess, thank you for all that background, it's very for this eighth grader, if they wanted to continue pursuing this, where would they go?
They would. I don't know. They would.
I think, if I may interrupt, I think it ought to be a council discussion first. This is something that we would support, and then we would try to figure out if we supported it, how we could make it happen. But I really think that before a very thoughtful eighth grader who wrote a very, very nice email to us goes out trying to figure out how to do it, we ought to decide if this is something that we would support for the town.
So should it go on the community development agenda then as a topic for upcoming discussion?
So I would say from a timing perspective, I do think it's a topic for an upcoming discussion. I don't know if we'll get it in before September. We've got one more meeting, but we could absolutely do that. And I've worked with Jeff based on what he's got calendar for the.
I understand it's not a major priority. I just want to make sure that, when kids especially reach out to us, that they see that, we take it, we don't just dismiss it. And not that anybody here is dismissing it. That's not something I'm saying, but that they see that we respect them and they're doing something about the things that they're asking.
We did respond to her.
Yes, I saw that, and thank you for that as well.
Can I add a couple of items, just because we don't have a manager's report? I wanted to make council aware that Chief Merrill, and Rob and I met with a group of residents on Forest Avenue that are really frustrated with speeders and feel very unsafe. Chief Merrill's put out special speed details. We're actually doing kind of plainclothes details to gather data of speeds, the speeds that people are getting. We're also doing more active and open, with marked cruiser details on some other streets in town that people have concerns with. But Rob has been working extensively or communicating extensively with Maine DOT about potential traffic calming measures. We've made some requests for potential grant funding for some crosswalk improvements, things like that. So when we met with 3 representatives of the group, great people, very thoughtful, very analytic in how they are perceiving their problem. And but if you get questions, I just want you to know that staff is working on trying to find some resolution and slow people.
Is the concern on excuse me, out of Forest Avenue or in a Forest Avenue?
That
Just gonna ask that.
the concern is from the hill, from downtown, all the way out to the bridge over I-95. So it is a significant, and the people that are complaining, and I use that not as a negative, but the people who are sharing their concerns are kind of all along that. We also met with Rob and Chris Prue and I, Rob's been busy, met with a few citizens from the Mount View neighborhood around the current construction that is in process. One of the things that Maine Department of Environmental Protection has written as an item of concern in our inspection for our sewer system is that the town has not always maintained the easements that those cross-country mains go through. And one of those cross-country mains goes from the backside of Mount View all the way down to we call it Happy Town, but that little area in between the town office and Asa Adams School. So it's a pretty significant. As part of our Mount View project, we put in clearing that easement. And it's a 20-foot easement that kind of travels along the edge of the town, what used to be the town properties. Most of it's on school property. When we, so that was in the scope of work. The good news is we didn't have to dig up the main that is kind of runs parallel to Mount View. We still had to clear the easement. And then we cleared the easement as it goes along for us. There was an issue with the contractor, the subcontractor that actually cleared trees that had been marked not to be taken down. And Rob is working with Sergeant to fix that. I have no reason to think that won't be fixed. But the other issue we're going to run into as we clear some of these easements that DEP is telling us have to be cleared is that people aren't used to that. People are not used to looking out what's on the other side of their property line and seeing it open. Rob is working to try to fill in some area along there. We're still looking at pricing for that, and I'll let you know how it goes. That has brought up, though, when it got cleared, they saw some sheds that got moved on school property, and we're working with the school right now to try to bring them into compliance with their site plan. You might hear about that. It is all in process. We need to give people the opportunity to come into compliance. We can't just go and move sheds. And the last item I had was I am working this week to get you out a schedule, looking based on feedback or lack thereof, that Monday nights seem to be working as primary nights, looking to keep the same schedule in place from now until the end of September, with the exception of taking off the weeks, the 15th, 22nd, and 29th of August. So we would have council meeting on the 8th and then council meeting again on September 12th. And then kick back into the rest of our work. If we need, so this becomes the, council has historically taken time in August off. It's usually been the first half of August and not had a council meeting. I have a vacation, so the question is I can either zoom in for the second half or we can take the second half off instead. So I'm looking for just a little bit of feedback there.
Second half looks okay.
Also trying to go on a vacation in the second half of August.
Okay with that?
So I will plan to just get that out and not have it go back to committee, just so we'll have it.
Public petitions or public comments, since we don't have anybody on.
Yeah, we want to let Mitch know that this is the public. We don't know if Mr. Schuster wants to talk with you.
I beg your pardon?
I don't know if Mr. Schuster wants to address council.
Did you have something you want to say? I think I'm on the right side.
Yeah, he's in the executive session. This is where you can sit right here, sir.
This is a continuation of two
Would
months
you,
ago.
just, excuse me, just for the record, would you give us your name and?
I can't do that. I work for the CIA. John Schuster,
Thank you.
spelled with SCH. 2 months ago, I was here and I proposed something to see if the community, specifically you guys first, were interested in something to do with the arts. And I explained what has gone on downtown already as a trial. I explained what I wanted to do downtown if I found the space, and I was wondering if you were interested in that kind of thing. And I went on to explain what I foresaw within the space. As I just told Mitch, I'm not going to count on the space downtown coming up right away. So, who knows? But anyway, the space in the community building in Benwick would be ideal since it's already owned by the city. Well, could you use it for the same idea I proposed for the space downtown? Would you be interested in that? I would be interested in getting the ball rolling and getting people in there, et cetera, et cetera. It's not my goal to be, and you would need somebody to be part-time director for what my vision was downtown, which would be not only a space where you showed art, but had people actually in the production of different art. It could be bowl making, it could be jewelry making, et cetera, et cetera. And they should have separate spaces for safety and other reasons where they're making these things. And they're on display. How outside of that is the community involved? Well, the community is welcome to come in the space anytime. And the people that are in practice there, the artisans, should be coordinating something between the citizens as far as training or internship or et cetera, et cetera. And their art that they produce there should be a space in there where they can show that off. That was my vision too. So as far as an internship, that's a lesson period that's intense, possibly intense. Could children be involved in that? Sure. I don't see why they couldn't be involved in that kind of program. that I would love to see in the city. I don't know whether you see that as something that the community would support and go there. I don't know. I told you I'd be willing to look for the artisans that would be involved in that kind of thing, design of how it would be set up, et cetera, et cetera. Get it going. That kind of thing. I think we said, I don't know whether I told you, but Mitch had asked a minimum of 1,500 square feet. Any questions?
Have you been advised of the public facilities discussion that's upcoming? We're gonna have a town discussion on July 28th regarding the current and future use of a number of town-owned facilities. I think this would be a great.
And that's already happening, it's already scheduled on the
Yeah.
28th
On the 28th, I think. it'd be
of
great.
this month.
Yep.
Yep.
Which is a Friday,
Thursday,
Thursday, Thursday evening, the 28th. Let's see, I have to figure something else. Let's see, what's the Tuesday and Thursday dates next week?
Calendar.
I can check my calendar.
23rd?
19th and 21st.
Okay, I can do it.
Yeah.
I can do it.
So it's going to be a broader conversation, right? I think we tended to look at a
Sure.
number of town facilities, but it'd be great to have this perspective.
Okay, I think that's, yeah, why not? That's here
at 5 o'clock.
at 5 o'clock. Okay, and that meeting is for that purpose.
It is.
Okay.
For the broad purpose.
For the broad purpose of the
Right.
usage of those
They're-
buildings.
they're-
I understand. that. Some people, other people probably have some ideas. too.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. And there's 2 floors and 1 floor.
Two.
Okay. I haven't gone over there, but the downstairs is not all broken up, or is it?
It is broken up.
All broken up.
Okay.
The upstairs is a large auditorium facility.
Would it be possible to get in there before then?
Yep, you need to have a conversation with Mitch, who I think has been your primary contact as you've been
Ever heard of
having. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
he can help you.
Enough said, the 28th at 5 o'clock.
Thank you.
Okay,
See you then.
Thanks.
thanks.
Any other public comments or public petitions? I think not. We have an executive session. We have 2 exec. Can we do 2 motions at the same time?
No,
Yeah.
you've got to come in and out and in and out. However, the plan would be to cut the feed because we do
There'll
not,
be no official
We're not-
action at the end of the meeting.
and no major discussion by counselors other than to say goodnight.
So I would like a motion pursuant to MRS 4056C to discuss the potential of economic development redevelopment project. All those in favor of going into executive session for that purpose, raise your hand, please. All in favor, none opposed.
So we're gonna cut the feed and I'm going to text Jeff when it's time for him to come wandering over because he's been getting work done.
Okay.
For the second session. Thank you, Bill.